Hey guys, Zach from Defcon Paintball here. Today we have an episode of I Broke It, now how do I fix it? We're not actually going to start and show you something that's actually broken. We're going to give you tips today on how to properly load your mags to prevent some feeding issues. All mags are slightly different. They're used for different purposes. So I'm going to ask you guys to come a little bit closer so you can get a good look at all these tips and tricks. All right, to start off, we have a standard 68 caliber continuous feed magazine. First things first is that you want to wind back the follower and spring mechanism so that it's all the way at the back. You want to be careful not to overturn it to not bust any mechanism that's inside of the magazine. Once that's done, you want to pull back on the T-bar right at the top of the collar and start dropping your paintballs into the magazine. If they freely float in there, they don't get obstructed or caught on anything, then those paintballs are good to use. But if at any point you have one fall in and sits just like that, you're going to want to take it out, toss it, because it will create a chop when the bolt comes in and chops half of that paintball that's not properly seated in the chamber. So let's take that one out. Oops. Toss it away and finish loading the magazine. So as you can see, they just drop right into place. Oops. Okay. All right, so now that my mag is fully loaded, you can see that I have a small gap right where the last paintball sat. If I don't close that up, I'm going to have a lot of shakage. I could possibly get a break when my mag does engage, when all that pressure hits it all at once. So what I'm going to do is put my finger in the hole, release the magazine, guide it up to that T-bar, and just spin back a little bit so I relieve the pressure on the rest of those paintballs. Alright guys, next up we're going to show you some tips on how to properly load a first strike mag. Let's grab everything over here. The most important part of loading your first strike mags is to make sure that the nose of the first strike always exits in the proper direction. Now this can totally be affected by having too much wiggle room within the magazine or possibly loading them incorrectly. They can spin in there if there's enough space to move around. So my suggestion is don't bother winding them back right away. Start loading your first strikes into the magazine. Maybe 8 or 10 or so, and basically once you start to feel a lot of resistance loading them in, that's when I want you to wind it back just a little bit, okay? Just so you have enough space to put in a few more first strikes. Essentially, you don't want too much space in there for them to fall down into, because they can possibly flip while falling through the chamber. And spin back a little bit more. Alright, and let's see. No, can't exactly get that last one in there. So as you can see, I have a small gap right in here. I want to minimize that gap as much as possible because as the mags walk around and shake, whether they're in my pouches or on my gun, those first strikes can flip and that nose might come out into the chamber in the wrong direction. So in order to do that, put your finger right at the top, release the follower, and guide it right up to the top. That way, when you shake it around, nothing's moving, nothing is spinning. I do suggest that you might want to wind back a little bit on the winder just to reset the engage mechanism so that you don't have any feeding issues when you do insert it. But you don't really have to because the first strikes, they are not made of a gelatin shell and they won't dimple. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the section below. And as always, like, subscribe, and thank you for watching.